This video was made possible by Brilliant. Hey space fans, Jack Beyer here with NASA Spaceflight. In today's flyover, we see that stacking of the Starship Launch Tower at Pad 39A is imminent, as evidenced by parts of the massive crane that will do the job being staged on site. We also have views of new hardware for Blue Origin's Jarvis test tank, and we get a look at Relativity's launch pad. We've got a lot to go over, so let's get right into it, starting with SpaceX's Hangar X and Starship Factory at Roberts Road. The build-out of the Roberts Road complex continues as SpaceX works on multiple projects around the site at once. At the launch tower fabrication area, no new segments have been built since our last flyover. Rather, the segments that were already constructed have had additional work done on them. Segments 1 and 3 have more hardware being installed on them, like handrails both on the outer perimeter as well as in the elevator shaft. The elevator is getting additional hardware like the outer doors that prevent you from falling into the shaft. These two segments are labeled as levels 1 and 5, which are the levels of the tower directly above the concrete base and the level of the quick disconnect arm respectively. You can see here that level 5 is indeed getting the initial hardware needed to support the quick disconnect arm. Neat! Since the segments were assembled in a different order than they will exist on the tower itself, segments 1, 2, 4, and 5 correspond to tower levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively. These segments can be seen with a raceway installed on the corner opposite from the side of the tower the launch mount will be on. This raceway will eventually house the wires, conduits, and other ground support equipment that will be used for all the power and fluids needed for the tower to get all of its Mechazilla superpowers and support a Starship launch. Even though no new tower segments are visible under construction in this flyover, we can see that that will change soon with the presence of parts for another segment being staged nearby. Work also continues on the GSE pipe sections by the tents, with some already having been joined together, and the addition of even more insulation than was seen on the last flyover. Yay, progress! Speaking of progress, the foundations for High Bay 3, or the Cape Mega Bay, or whatever you want to call it, have been seen with concrete poured over the rebar that we saw laid down in our last flight. We can also see cross-bracing for HB3. See, HB3 has a good ring to it. Stored by the GSE pipe production area up north. These cross braces will go in between the main steel columns and beams for added structural reinforcement. Then, all of that will get covered by the panels that form the external facade of the building. Next door from here, the foundation work on the Starship Factory is progressing, with the pile driller doing more work near Roberts Road itself. On the more cosmetic side of things, Hangar X is having some work done on its east side, with a concrete walkway and some groundwork underway. This is not too surprising now though, because Elon recently shared a render of how Roberts Road will look once all the major work is done, and that cosmetic work can be seen on the same corner of the Hangar X building. We can also see the opening for vehicles to enter and exit HB3 will be on the north side of the Star Factory, and the Star Factory will feature two different roof heights, likely to accommodate nose cone and payload bay stacking. That's about it for Roberts Road this week, but be sure to stay tuned for future flyovers so that we can keep track of all the progress at Starbase Kennedy. Speaking of, can we make Starbase Kennedy a thing? Please? Alright, moving on to SpaceX's Launch Complex 39A, where the starships built at Roberts Road will launch, we can see that all of the legs for the Starship launch mount are in place. In our last flyover, only 3 of the 6 were up, so it's nice to see that rapid progress there. But don't get too distracted by the legs. You guessed it, that's a crane base. This is the first time we've been able to spot the giant crane that will help build the infrastructure for launching and landing Starship rockets at 39A. In the coming weeks and months, we should be seeing more parts of this crane delivered and assembled. It remains to be seen what kind of crane will be used, but potentially it could be an LR-11350, the same type of crane we saw used for tower assembly in Starbase Boca Chica. It could even end up being the successor to Frankencrane, or as I'll call it, Frankencrane 2 Electric Boogaloo. I know you saw that coming. Given the arrival of the crane at 39A and the state of the launch tower segments at Roberts Road, rollout of those segments to 39A and stacking on the concrete base could be very soon. Speaking of the concrete base, it looks like the remaining concrete pour needed to complete it has occurred. You can see what it looked like during our last several flyovers here, compared to now. We can see that more work is also ongoing on the future location of the drawworks for the Mechazilla system. Once the concrete cures, the first launch tower segment will be stacked on top of it. Wood cribbing, or crane mats, thanks again to the Starship fan who found me in Boca Chica and told me their name, can be seen stored by the 2 tents south of the launch mount. These will be used as a surface for moving and distributing the weight of whatever massive crane ends up being assembled there. Nearby, several supports for GSE lines are also visible to the north of the launch tower and over at the former Starship landing site by the 2 tents. Finally, we were also able to spot the octagonal foundation that is located by the main ramp that we were only previously able to see from satellite pictures. We still don't know what kind of work is being done here, but as always, we'll keep watching. My personal bet is on some sort of Starship testing or staging infrastructure, but really I have no idea. Changing pace a bit to more Falcon-related things, we can see at the main ramp at 39A that the transporter erector, or TE, used for Falcon 9 is not present outside, which indicates that it is back in the hangar for rocket integration. This makes sense, as SpaceX is gearing up to launch the CRS-25 mission from this pad in the next few days. Update. While this video is being edited, it was announced that CRS-25 will be delayed due to an elevated propellant reading. At SpaceX's nearby Launch Complex 40, however, the TE is still outside and it hasn't picked up the reaction frame yet. It is expected that SpaceX will launch the Nilesat 301 mission from here in the next few days, so that will have to happen soon. If you're curious, the TE is made of two main parts, the strongback and the reaction frame. The reaction frame is the piece that interfaces with the GSE, and the launch mount on one side, the bottom, and at the other, the top, holds the base of the rocket as well as supplies power and fluids to the booster and up the strongback. The strongback allows SpaceX to move the rocket from horizontal to vertical and vice versa, and it also supplies power and fluids to the second stage, as well as purge umbilicals on the inner stage and the fairing. At launch, the strongback quickly disconnects from the reaction frame so that it is able to move away from the rocket and protect all of its important plumbing and wiring. For that reason, every time SpaceX has to get the TE ready for another flight, it needs to connect to the reaction frame, literally pick it up from the launch mount, and then roll it back to the hangar with it attached. Since we see that this hasn't happened yet at Slick 40, at the time of the flyover, it's likely that SpaceX can just process Falcons with fairings and commercial satellites much faster in general than it can process rockets that have a Dragon on top. At Port Canaveral, SpaceX's fleet is also in great shape, with a shortfall of gravitas seen ready to depart for its role as a landing site for CRS-25's booster. That booster, by the way, is B-1067, which will be on its 5th flight, and the Dragon is C-208, which will be on its 3rd flight. Bob and Doug are also at the ready for use tugging the drone ship and recovering the fairing halves from the Nilesat 301 mission. Meanwhile, the other East Coast drone ship, just read the instructions, was nowhere to be seen because it was an early bird this morning and left port for the Nilesat launch before we could even spot it. Next up, let's talk SLS. While no orange rocket was present at pad 39B as of this flyover, by the time you're watching this, it will have rolled out from the VAB and made its way back to 39B. While there, it will attempt once again to perform the all-important wet dress rehearsal necessary for the vehicle to be ready for launch. The NSF team was on site for rollout, and we streamed it live, in case you're on the lookout for SLS nighttime rollout goodness with a healthy dose of in-depth info from Philip Sloss and Chris G. We'll put the link in the description. Next, over at Blue Origin, the 2CAT, or the second stage cleaning and testing facility, is close to completion. That is where New Glenn's second stages will be, you guessed it, cleaned and tested. The 2CAT's roof is completely covered now, and the frame for the potential door entrance is also making progress. It might not be that much longer until we are able to see them outfitting the inside of the building to prepare it for operation. You can already see the different levels inside looking pretty complete in terms of overall structure. Hopefully the door takes a long time to build and obscure our view. On the south side of Blue Origin's campus, not that much has changed since our last flyover. One thing of note though is the progress made on the foundations for the warehouse expansion that is currently underway. Thankfully, Blue Origin updates don't stop there. Over at their Launch Complex 36, there is another big development. Next to the hangar, you can see a barrel section just sitting outside. This is very likely to be the start of a second test tank for the Jarvis program. In case you forgot, Jarvis is Blue Origin's attempt to develop a reusable upper stage for New Glenn, similar to what SpaceX is trying to do with Starship. You can see their first tank prototype a bit further away from the hangar. While we don't have any confirmation of this tank being tested, we can see in Google Maps imagery that its stand is hooked up to the tank farm, which suggests that testing has taken place. It's fun to think about how the Jarvis program appears, at least externally, to be where the early Starship program was back at the start of 2020. It feels like ancient history and is exciting to think about where the Jarvis program might be in 2.5 years. Last up for Blue Origin is the fact that the transporter, which was previously present on the ramp to the pad, was rolled back to the hangar. While we have no knowledge of why that was done, it's at least hopeful that we might see a rollout of the New Glenn Strongback with the first stage Pathfinder to the launch pad in the near future. Everybody cross your fingers. Next up, out at Slick 46, we can see Astra's ground service equipment, as well as the container that Rocket 3 is being stored in after completing static fire last week. Final preparations are underway, leading up to their launch of the NASA TROPICS-1 mission. We can also see Relativity Space's Launch Complex 16, where the first Terran 1 first stage was delivered today as tweeted by founder and CEO Tim Ellis.
Carrier has arrived.
Always love a good StarCraft reference. This is an exciting step towards the company's first orbital launch attempt, which is planned for later this year. I cannot wait. Another thing I can't wait for is to tell you about our sponsor for this video, Brilliant. If you're anything like me, you learn best from hands-on experience. With Brilliant, you get fun and interactive lessons in all kinds of STEM topics that help you learn more effectively than just watching or reading something online. Brilliant uses examples, diagrams, and simple questions to help guide you through topics interactively and at your own pace. Viewers of this channel might enjoy learning about the famous rocket equation as part of the classical mechanics course, or, if you're not ready for that yet, the scientific thinking course that comes right before it will give you the foundational bedrock that you need to feel comfortable with more advanced topics. And if you get a question wrong or just want more information, there's always a detailed explanation on how to find the answer. From computer science to calculus, Brilliant covers all sorts of fascinating topics. Get started learning on Brilliant for free with a special offer just for our viewers. Visit brilliant.org/NASA Spaceflight or click on the link in the description. The first 200 people to sign up will get 20% off their annual premium membership. Thanks again to Brilliant for making this video possible. Well, that's it for this flyover. Make sure to also check out our daily videos from Boca Chica to stay up to date on all things Starship. And if you don't have time for that, then check out the update video we just released going over all the recent developments in Starbase. Furthermore, thanks to all our members that support videos like this. Without you, we couldn't do it. Alright, I'll see you next time.